2, 1, action.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the February 15th work session of the Croton-Harmon Board of Education to order. We will begin this evening with a moment of silence in memoriam of Anne Gillelli. As many of you know, Anne Gillelli was a 50-year resident of Croton with over 35 years of public service to the village, most recently serving as deputy mayor for 11 years. We are very sad to hear of her passing, and our thoughts are with her family at this time. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second. On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, before we move into new business, I know at our last meeting, our district clerk spoke about the process for candidate petitions, and I wanted to give this opportunity to turn it over to our two current Board of Education members whose terms are coming to a close. So we'll start with.
Sure. Sasha. Good evening. I'd like to thank the Croton-Harmon School District community for allowing me to serve as trustee on the board for the last 2.5 years. It's been a very exciting time, starting with the hiring of our new superintendent, leading into our future facilities plan, and now the various passion projects happening in our buildings and the district's What School Can Be campaign. Serving as trustee, while significant changes concerning approaches to teaching and learning happen for all of our students, it's been one of the most rewarding parts of my tenure. This has only been outdone by the privilege of watching our seniors cross the stage and graduate each June. I recently read somewhere that there is no substitute for what only time can teach. It is because of this that I seek to run again for my seat as trustee in order to continue to serve the community and our students. There's a significant amount of learning that takes place as a trustee regarding the district and board operations in general. The onboarding process does not happen in one day or even in 1 year. It is because I feel there's still more to do that I hope to continue my growth and learning as trustee, ensuring our students have the opportunities to achieve their highest performance levels. I will continue to ask important questions regarding our district's continued commitment to each student's experience, and I will continue to seek clarity in our board structures, policies, practices, and communications. Finally, as a parent of 4 students currently in the district, my drive will always be in the best interest of our students. Croton is our home. We cheer for all the Tigers, and I hope to continue to serve. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening.
First. I would like to publicly announce that I plan on seeking re-election for another 2-year term on the Board of Education. I think together we've been able to make some great strides in the district, and I'm eager to continue the work towards making Croton-Harmon a future-driven, student-focused school system. And I think it would be a privilege to continue working on shaping what school can be. And I humbly ask the public for their support and their vote at the upcoming budget and trustee election on May 21st. Do I have that right? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will now move into new business. Recommended action, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Croton-Harmon Union Free School District hereby nominates Neil Haber, residing at 7 Sunset Drive, which is located within the Croton-Harmon Union Free School District, as candidate for election to be held on April 16th, 2024, to serve as trustee for the Putnam Northern Westchester Board of Cooperative Educational Services for a term beginning July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2027.
So moved.
Second. On the question?
Yes, I will say something to my colleagues and to the community. Last August, I was approached by the president of the Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES board and asked if I would be willing to serve to fill out the term of term of an expiring, of a member who had left the area. And I said I would do so. I've had a great learning curve over the last few months. As Anna said, you don't learn things about a board in a day or a week or a month or even years, but I have had the opportunity to start to learn what BOCES is about and how BOCES can be a driving force for educational improvement, particularly for those who we have the need to provide services, whether it's special education services or career and technical education services. And I see challenges, but I see opportunities there to make things better for our students and for the students throughout the region and throughout the state. And I certainly welcome the support of my own board and hopefully the support of other boards in the election in April.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to abstain.
Oppose? Abstain?
Yeah.
Motion carries. All right, we'll now move into board policy for first reading. Our policy 8130.2, workplace violence prevention, is before the board for first reading. I'll turn it over to our policy chair to give us a brief overview.
Briefly, for a number of years, the state has had a requirement that employers must put together and implement a workplace violence prevention policy and program. Last year, the state legislature passed and the governor signed a statute that extends this requirement to public employers, including school districts. The requirement is to develop a policy and thereafter to develop a program which will include training on workplace violence prevention and putting in processes and programs to help guard against workplace violence. We have a rather strict deadline for getting this policy in place, but well, in all honesty, we haven't quite met the deadline because there's been a lot of discussion with different human resources personnel from districts, including our assistant superintendent in charge of that area, John Griffith, to determine what that policy should be. Policy committee met on the 8th of February and approved this policy for first reading. It has been discussed also with our safety consultant, Al Paris, at the most recent district emergency response team meeting, of which I am the liaison from the board. And we are ready to move forward with that program once the policy is in place. And with the reading today, first reading, everybody will have an opportunity to ask questions about it. Policy is basically modeled on what NISBA has sent out, and we will, I presume, be ready to adopt at our business meeting on the 7th of March. So if there are any questions, pass them on. I will just let you know, since we don't have policy, committee reports, policy committee is meeting on the 27th, right? At 8 a.m. And we will certainly be able to discuss any comments or questions that people have prior to that date. If you get it to us prior to that date.
Nothing like beginning the day with some policy. Looking forward to it.
If anyone has any questions right now, feel free. If not, any questions or comments, just send them to the policy committee. All right, we'll move on to ongoing business. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves the 2024-2025 Board of Education meeting calendar as presented.
So we'll
Second.
I just need 1 second, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions? All in favor? Aye. Oppose, abstain? Motion carries. We will move into donations. Recommended action that the Board of Education gratefully accepts a donation from the Croton Harmon Education Foundation, CHEF, in the amount of $2,856.99 for an interdisciplinary physical education class focusing on breathing, yoga, mindfulness, and meditation for 6th grade students at Pierre Van Cortlandt Middle School.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor? Aye. Oppose, abstain? Motion carries. Now we'll move into the consent agenda. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves approves all items on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, shout out to Barry for getting the Chase report done, and so we have electronic audit trail instead of printing things out in link trees. So thank you.
Hundreds of things out.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
I guess one question, since Bill Tom is here, can ask the question about the hockey, girls ice hockey team and the boys ice hockey team, which are merged teams with many different schools. Two questions, just out of curiosity. First is, how many students have we had or do we anticipate?
Okay, so I'll give you that answer. Back, early January, when we got back from break, I put a parent square out, kind of getting a survey, checking the temperature throughout the community. This year, we had 0 girls play ice hockey. I looked at the records from last year. We had 1 or 2 with interest. We didn't have any interest, but I kept it alive just in case there is groundswell. It doesn't cost us anything. If we're in a merger and it doesn't come to fruition. The boys, we had 2 try out, pretty competitive team, and we have 1 that is playing. He's actually the captain of the team. They play in the sections on Friday. I'll see him. He actually wants to go play overseas and may have a chance to. So it served a huge purpose and role in his life. So.
Well, that's great. The other question I was wondering is, in terms of, for that 1 boys player, where are the practices and games, and what do we do about transportation?
Okay, so we use, Irvington is the host school. We use Westchester Sports Academy down in Elmsford. That is their home base. That's where they practice. He transports himself. We do not provide school transportation. Ice hockey is a crazy animal. They'll practice 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. In fact, they're playing at 250 shocked me the other day. I thought I was gonna be shucking down there at 9 o'clock for a drop puck. So that's kind of where we are with that.
Okay.
One other piece on the ice hockey though, the 5th, 6th and 7th grade, we had 10 boys that were interested. So we're gonna be talking more, or Christine down the road will be talking more about ice hockey. But there was significant interest relative to where we've been.
So on that, since we talked about 5th, 6th, 7th, which would then, of course, be moving up a grade. I mean, that would probably call for the possibility of some kind of a joint JV team. I'm thinking, because I can't imagine that seventh and eighth graders, for the
Ice
most
hockey is
part.
also a weird animal in that most of those young men play club. So there is an opportunity for them. So they may just go club until they're into the high school world. We had a tenth grader and a twelfth grader this year try out.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose, abstain? Motion carries. All right, so now we will move into our budget work session. Thank you all for joining us this evening, and I will turn it over to Superintendent Walker to get us started.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Good evening, everyone. Good evening to the Tigers who are here in person and those watching at home. I want to thank Bill and Christine and Jared for leading us off in terms of our administrative presentations of the vision for the 24-25 budget. And because we recognize that the budget process is a time when the community perhaps is more attuned to the functions and messaging of the school district than perhaps at other times during the year, I never want to miss opportunities to talk a little bit about our district goals and our vision map and our direction. Because one of the things I think I'm most proud of in terms of the vision map is that this has taken us from a system that, like most systems, was about 1 year increments and is about now a longer term trajectory. Right? And that's really one of the things that's most valuable about this kind of work is that it lends coherence, both short and long term, to the work that we do here. And it ties together a lot of what feel like sometimes disparate efforts between different buildings and different departments into one overall messaging around what school can be. And I encourage the community to think about evidence of, through the budget presentations and through our messaging this year, of how the budget doesn't just do school better, doesn't just make incremental improvements to what is already an excellent system, but really aspires toward that continued vision of making school better, pushing on the boundaries of what the regular run-of-the-mill school experience has been for hundreds of years. And not every part of any budget can be about that kind of fundamental change, but I encourage you both tonight and in the future to be attuned to those things, because you'll see that the vision map isn't just about taking work we were already going to do and cramming it into a strategic planning message. I genuinely believe it's about inspiring different ways of thinking about how we can enhance the experience of our kids. And you'll hear that starting tonight from our three outstanding leaders. We say all the time, budget development is about dollars and cents, but fundamentally it's about vision and values. And you'll hear that tonight, beginning with our dynamic duo in the area of health, wellness, physical education, and athletics. Bill and Christine, happy to turn it over to you.
Thank you. We're going to talk some nuts and bolts, and I guess probably more at the end. But the vision was, when I came in back in June, little antidote here. Steve said, can you handle doing an intern with you? And I'm like, oh boy, I'm gonna be babysitting. And
That's not
you know,
actually what you told me, Bill, but.
I didn't say anything to you about
Your
that.
response.
That was my thought. In a little bubble. So, you know, and then day one, Christine walks in, and a seasoned veteran, and working in Manhattanville and on some Nike committees and doing tons of things that you guys all know about. It was nothing but a godsend at that point. And we started talking about things in the district that needed addressing. And Christine, you know, brought her expertise. And one of the things was social media. And the social media was dead in the water when we started. And, you know, I'm not a social media person, you know, thank God Christine was. And I go to AD meetings and they're like, well, who's doing your social media at this point? And I said, well, we have a couple people in district that are really good with it. And we went from no footprint to being one of the model social media platforms out there. So, you know, thank you for that. And I'm glad we had the opportunity, because it was awesome that she was here. That being said, I know Christine was going to talk a little bit about social media, and we're going to kind of bat it back and forth. So I'll let her talk a minute or two on that, and we'll kind of keep moving through some points.
Yeah, so moving forward with social media, like we've established, as Bill said, a pretty good footprint in the athletic world. So there's a lot of great things happening in the PE and health world as well. So we wanted to try to start to highlight that. So we are thinking about whether or not we would highlight PE and health on the athletics page or create different platforms. Maybe have something on the website where we're talking a little bit about curriculum and upcoming happenings and events, both in the PE and health world, as well as wellness. So as we move forward, you can start to look towards some of those things that will be highlighted. And, you know, like there's a self-defense class. We just recently put up some pictures on social media that there was a lawyer that came and spoke to that class. So just different things like that, so that everybody in the community knows what's happening, not only in the athletics world, but in PE, health and wellness.
All right, and if you look, the first slide that was up, if you take a picture, I'm just gonna kind of talk you through that and some of the things that happened. When I came in, the biggest word, and we've talked about this in the last time I presented to the board, was disconnect. There was not a connection. Teams didn't feel supported, coaches didn't feel supported. So I think social media helped do that, but you can see just from those pictures, you know, on the left is myself at the Breakfast of Champions. We brought that back and we honored those teams that had won in the fall. We had 3 undefeated league championship teams. We had a swimmer who was an 8th grade girl who went to states, and she was the only middle schooler in her event. So we celebrated those after all was said and done, and the Booster Club brought them T-shirts. We had a banner, and the community donated breakfast, and we took an hour at the beginning of the day. And those are the kinds of things that I think we need to stop, and I hear it often when you guys are talking about it, reflect. And we reflected and we celebrated. So you can see a few of the Breakfast of Champions. The bottom picture is the whole group. Right in the middle this weekend, it was really cool. I went down to the county center. First time they've done the sectional wrestling in the county center. And there were 2 first, the section hosting it and us having 2 section champions going up to Albany to wrestle in the States. And though that was great and awesome in and of itself, Booch and I looked at each other and almost started crying, because one of the kids who didn't win all year won a match that day, and there was another young man who's changed his whole self-esteem by being part of the wrestling program, and those 2 were hugging our 2 state champions, and they were all winners in and of themselves. So that was really a great moment down there. And then we talk about community and involving the community. The 2 right-hand pictures up at the top were the Steve Aguado, the Iggy celebration, and the hits we had on the video live stream, the feedback we had. It was the right thing for the right person at the right time. And I know what made it even more special, like everybody that didn't know Steve jumped on board and understood what he meant to a community. So that was tremendous. And that being said, when we're opening up Spencer in 2025, and a few strands of groups, the 75 football team will be the 50th anniversary. They've already got the whole weekend planned. They were so excited to be back and meet people that were currently involved with the school. We're gonna honor, I think, the Terry Smith era, and then we're gonna honor all our state champions that first year back on the turf. And moving forward, I know there was some discussion from previous ADs about a Hall of Fame. We have a group, unofficial group, that's kind of talking about how we can make that happen as proud alum of Croton High School. And then just down in the bottom right-hand corner, that's the boys volleyball team. And we just talked about a merger for JV with them. They won the Fall Sportsmanship Award. And I think just as equal as celebrating our successes on the field, on the court, is how our kids carry themselves. If you know, and Neil was around with my basketball guys, there was a certain way Croton kids were gonna handle their business. And that volleyball team was selected. And let me give you a little context. Every high school has 5, 6 or more varsity sports, 50 plus schools, 250, 300, 350 teams. We were the one that was selected as the outstanding sportsman. So Steve and Laura went down to the awards with us. And after they left, after the presentation, other ADs were like, well, who were those people? Why are they here? I said, well, I was my superintendent, my principal. And they go, how did you get them here? Our super would never come. Our principal would never come. And I said, I simply asked them because they're proud Tigers. I mean, you know, we celebrated all the things together. So that was an amazing day. And you know, like I said, it's equally important to celebrate, you know, those kinds of things as it is. It's winning in the right way. So So that was kind of a little bit about what that slide's about. And I know we're budget, but, I'm really proud of where we are right now athletically and where we're gonna be going. So I'm giving you a little bit of history, so I hope you don't mind, a little bit of context in case you didn't know all about these things. One of the things we're gonna do to build connection with our staff, the swim picture right in the middle, Hen Hud does this, and I thought it was a great exercise, a great event. They honor their faculty and staff, and each varsity athlete in each season gets to choose somebody on staff that has been important to them. And Christine saw it in swimming, and she said, boy, this is awesome. So I said, we gotta talk about how to go forward with it. So Christine's basically gonna start a little bit early in July 1, and she's gonna implement it in the spring. And we're going to do a faculty staff honoring, which I think, talking about that disconnect, which was a common theme, that's another way to reconnect and connect. And, you know, the kids that walk through the office and say hi to Carla during the day and the connections there, and like watching Booch at wrestling. There's just so many connections and so many more we could have. And, you know, that in the upper left, that was, we gave out the CH letters to the people that won. But I have on order little pins that what Hen Hud faculty does, they put them on their lanyards. So when they're selected, it's kind of a badge of honor that they were selected, and from custodians to cafeteria people to teachers to administrators. So I think it'll be a nice way to recognize. Down at the bottom, we're always gonna try to, and I talked to Christine about homecomings when I was here, every homecoming honored somebody, some piece of Croton we brought back and honored. So the bottom left, obviously Coach Catano and staff were our football coaches. We honored them. To the right was the pep rally in the gym. You know, people saw the bleachers during homecoming. There was a real buzz. We have Steve and Christine and company under the balloons. You know, it's just great, the interaction we had. So we're gonna just try to figure out ways to build on that. And we don't want to do that in isolation either. We want faculty, staff, board, superintendent, everybody to help with that. So, those are kind of the things that we were talking about. A little bit now of more of the reason why we're here, the budget, and Christine's gonna jump in and talk a little bit about what the future looks like from the health, wellness, and physical education points of view.
So we're excited to think about what school could be in the PE and health setting, and we're going to do some spin-offs of passion projects that teachers are working on. Kevin Brunel is working on adaptive PE, and we're gonna look into doing unified sports as well. At CET, we launched Girls on the Run for the first time, and it was very popular, actually filled up, and they are looking to expand and have potentially a second team, or look at starting it in the middle school with the older group of girls. There's a self-defense class that's currently being taught. And then there is sports medicine that's up here at the high school as an elective. And we are looking into mini courses where we're gonna have some cross collaboration. Physics is gonna meet with PE, and they're gonna work on sailing. We are talking to Grit Ninja Gym and maybe doing like some Ninja Warrior type stuff up here. They would come and set a course up outside. And then some other passion projects that are on the table are mountain biking, golf, different net sports. So we're trying to think outside the box for the PE and health world and bring in some different courses and electives and things of that nature.
I can tell you, Bill, Laura, and I can attest to the fact that self-defense course is rigorous.
I feel like you could barely walk.
That was a humbling experience.
Like, what happened to you?
Yeah.
It was great because there were about 60 signed up, but we couldn't get them all into the class. So we're hoping, you know, when you see the athletic budget, it's very modest, but that's only because as Christine figures out what we need going forward, you'll probably see a little bit more robust budget 2, 3, 4 years down the line, where we can try to take some of these mini projects, mini curriculums, and expand them even more. So that's kind of the thought with the curriculum. The other thing just I left out or should talk about was our branding. When you walked in, I don't know if you noticed, there were some formats out there. We have avenue banners coming for around the campus. We're trying to do things that just create a vibe and a buzz. We're going to the back entrance door 14. We have trophy plaque kind of cases coming in. I've already talked to the boosters. We're gonna come in and sort through all our league championship plaques that are down in the basement, get those up, because I can't tell you how many alum wander through and wanna show, a partner or a child, hey, I was on this team, and it's not there anywhere. So we're gonna try to, have all that done, probably by the time Christine's on, we'll all work on that in the spring. Some of the less glamorous stuff and infrastructure in the athletic department. One of the problems with turnover was inventory and keeping track of purchases. So to that end, I've recreated, which I used to do, was a rotation of uniforms. So we know who's on tap. We try to go, if boys basketball gets uniform, girls basketball gets uniforms. We are pushing down into the modified. This year we got modified boys and girls basketball uniforms. Honestly, what we were wearing last year was subpar, from what I would say. And they fell in love with what we did, and we look good, and I think we're playing good. And, it's part of that whole, self-image and creating a good kind of climate for them to do. I'm gonna see Laura. Laura's, gonna come down and help clean the dungeon. I don't know if you've been down, if you guys even know what I'm talking about, but that is the storage area.
Laura's gonna clean the dungeon.
Oh,
League?
she volunteered.
Can you let me know when this happens?
Laura right now.
Can you let me know when this happens?
Saturday
We'd like
morning
to
this
see
spring,
that.
but I will give you a specific
Okay.
date when it comes.
So when you're talking
We want-
about.
yeah, we want
you're talking
evidence.
about-
No, yes,
You're
there's,
not talking-
there's a dungeon for drama, but there's also a dungeon for athletics. Down the back stairway, there's a basement, and, it's just cluttered. So we're gonna go in. I've already, gone through all the plastic bins we've created, and this isn't, like I said, isn't glamorous, but we've created a way to inventory all the uniforms, to weed out what we don't use. Coaches were never really held accountable, so we've been washing uniforms here. We've done a lot of things, like over the break when we had the Makeland tournament, just getting things organized. And it's not quite there yet, but I'd love you to see what's down there. And when it's done, I think it's gonna be, a spot where we can then have a handle on what we're ordering. Because you can't order things if you don't know what you have, and I don't know that we haven't had a full handle on what we had. So making coaches responsible there, I think is really important. Other nuts and bolts, if we go, I think, to the pie chart a little bit. If you can see, supplies and others, the 7.3% is kind of, I guess, the discretionary money that we spend, but it really isn't. If we're gonna have a baseball team, you need baseballs, bats, helmets, etc. So, that piece is kind of what it is. Most of the increases are BOCES increases, coaching salaries, those kinds of things that we're contractually obligated to. So there really isn't a lot there. I know that in my past life, the school board liked to know about numbers and those kinds of things. Let me just make sure I'm quoting you correctly. Perfect, thank you. Year to year, and I talked about this in the fall, we were 90 more athletes involved this fall than last fall. Some might say, well, you added a boys volleyball team. But inventory and polling those kids, a lot of them came from non-other sports, a few football kids and a few soccer kids. So it was really new. And reflected in that number, we didn't run a girls modified soccer team because many of those girls tested up and then the other girls were playing clubs. So they found that was the better path. Gender wise, 40 more girls than boys in the fall, which I think is pretty good, because I don't know that back in the day it was that skewed that one direction. So the female participation is awesome. Winter, there was a decrease overall of 8, but we started cutting in the modified sports because it was just unmanageable. So if we counted in all the kids that tried out, we were plus 20. So there really was a growth. And that comes back to, like, do we want to add another modified basketball, girls and boys teams? Volleyball was the same with girls volleyball in the fall. You know, that's a bigger, broader discussion than tonight, but, you know, it's interesting to see what we want to do with that. And, in the winter, there were 20 more male athletes than female athletes, so it skewed back the other way a little bit. But, I think that's,
Bill, on that, I think that depends on teams that you have, and you have that chart right up there, and we can look at the teams in the winter, right?
Mhm.
We've got basketball, boys and girls, ice hockey, cheer, and ice hockey, we talked about numbers there. Track and wrestling. And I think so just by the nature of a lot of those sports, you would tend to have more boys than girls participating. Right, we have probably what, a dozen boys wrestling, and I don't know if we have any
no,
girls.
the numbers actually, wrestling's pushing 30, and we had
Okay.
27 boys and 2 girls.
Okay,
But wrestling's a unique situation because there's a deadline to get your weight certifications, because they do a weight management for the year, from the health perspective. So we had a handful of girls that came out, saw that there were girls wrestling, but they were too late to make the qualifying time. So I think that number is gonna be between 5 and 10 next year.
Okay.
I really think that's gonna grow.
yeah, I just, for the equity perspective, anybody listening, I wanted to say that, you know, we understand our Title IX obligations, but we can't just look at the numbers each season and just say, well, they match up or don't match up, and therefore we're meeting Title IX or not meeting Title IX. There's obviously a lot more to it.
So just up on the board now, you see, you know, what we're doing with new opportunities. The boys JV, which we mentioned briefly, that will still be a merged team with Briarcliff. The Bearcats will still live. Girls wrestling, the numbers are gonna go up there. They actually wrestled for the first time a state girls championship this year. And it was it was a great success. So, Unified Sports, which is a spin-off of the Passion Project that, Kevin Brunel has, that is, a special needs program in the spring that couples mainstream and special needs kids together. And, they participate against other schools on a smaller scale than we would for a high school team. But they do basketball and bowling in the spring. So we'll have one coach there that will handle both ends of that. And we're really looking forward to going up and seeing what Hen Hud does this spring. Tommy Baker, their AD, said it's the most rewarding program they offer in the athletic department. So I can understand why. So, you know, we talked about the branding, the fitness center, still, we still haven't kind of figured out what that space is. Is it a phys ed space? Is it a strength training spot for athletes? Can it be both? I have somebody coming in from BSN who is the leader in that finding space, and they're gonna talk us through, you know, the first thoughts of what they would do if they were in there. And then, you know, as Christine, you know, is here more, we're gonna talk a little bit about it and try to figure out how all that space can be captured for phys ed and athletics, and not one or the other.
Just to jump into Neil's point of equity, on our radar is girls flag football, which is coming down the pipe 2024, 2025. So it's on our radar.
So
for
some
sure.
schools have it this spring, and, you know, we haven't had any push from the inside. The other one that was an interesting poll was fencing. We have some young fencers. So, you know, we'll see if that grounds well, but a lot of them are in clubs. So, and I don't know if that's similar to the swimming where it's more of the club is the way to go. That's a winter sport. So, and we're gonna, actually do a phys ed. Joe Paterno, who's our tennis coach, that's his world fencing. So he and the West Point coach are buddies. So they're gonna come in and do, it may be just a 1 day or maybe a cycle, but we're gonna try to, you know, show them fencing. And I think I talked about that I did it as part of my phys ed curriculum back when I was teaching phys ed. So.
Just two questions. One, just out of curiosity, I noticed the elective, the sports medicine elective. Can you just describe how have we done it before? Is it new?
This was
How would it
new.
work?
Melissa Allen Parisi was the teacher. It talked about functional movement, which is the big buzz right now. how do you create functional movement that will strengthen you, and a lot of prophylactics in terms of how do you train to prevent injuries? I think that's one of the key things you'll hear from trainers these days. So she dealt a lot with that. It was a fall elective, so we talked more towards the end. So I have a lot of ideas that I've shared with Christine. We're going to talk to her a little bit more and start to move that forward and enhance that.
And this is a very quick thing around just the curiosity about the Avenue banners. Have we only put that on school property, or are we able to put that around the village, put those banners around the village in any way?
I'll look to the board.
We haven't asked. I'd be happy to
Yeah,
ask Brian, but we have not posed that question yet. Yeah, we will. Yeah.
yeah, and
Homecoming and stuff.
Yeah.
and Laura and I have talked about it. You know, she was ready to do it this year, so I'm sure once we don't have a CET and PVC, there's gonna be a groundswell of people looking to add them. So, you know, we had a little bit of discretionary money, and we just tried to start the branding. Because again, we walked into it and it didn't feel, it was pretty sterile. It didn't scream Croton. So we wanted to really be branded and do that.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak a little bit to, where we started at the beginning of the year and you stepping in and what I think as a community we really wanted, which was that community spirit and the excitement surrounding athletics. And I think that we had momentum in that direction, but you both really knocked it out of the park with respect to social media and the different events. The Iggy Aguado event was definitely a celebration of Iggy and who he was, but it was also like a snapshot of Croton athletics history, acknowledging all of the various teams that day and the coaches. And there were people who had, traveled far and wide to be there. And for me, it was an education in the tradition because I've only lived here for 15 years. So that event just was amazing to sit through. So I want to also just thank you for that. With respect to girls wrestling, this story just makes me cry. Like there was a need in this district for girls who were interested in wrestling and they were allowed to practice, and to see them, transform over the course of that season just from practicing. And then now to hear that you're going to, evolve into that because there's an interest just kind of makes me happy as a trustee to know that we're, moving into what interests our students. And to that, I just wanted to kind of ask a little bit for the benefit of the public, if you could describe, the trajectory in the high school with respect to like traditional, rotation of sports versus that independent kind of track that I know is offered to students, because I think it's so reflective of how we really are trying to meet students where they are. Not every student wants to go to physical education and redo, flag football in the fall and basketball. They want, and I also think it's like a gift of a lifetime to teach students while you have them here that they could be responsible for their own health and wellness. And I think that's what the high school program is doing. So I hope I didn't reveal too much. But
So that's, I think the future thinking is exactly that. It's not gonna be, hey, you're assigned this period and you have a choice of fitness or team sports.
Right.
We're gonna try to make it work. One of the big drivers of that is staffing, to be honest. So we did some electives back towards my last 5 to 10 years, and we had net sports, yoga, fitness walking. We were starting to do the sports medicine. We were gonna do sports officiating and current events in sports and kind of talk about things that are going on there. There's, the sailing with the physics is gonna be phenomenal. Once the APs are done in physics, the juniors that are left are gonna be kind of our test group, and they're gonna come down and do the sailing. And I think that's gonna be really, really neat to get them out on the river sailing. Crew was another discussion. Some people had brought up, all we did was drop a pin and go about 10-mile radius. And what do we have? We have orienteering. We have so many things, mountain biking, all those things are around. So we need to figure out how to cash in on those. So I think that's kind of what's going to drive it. I don't know if you have anything to add, but.
Yeah, I mean, in the phys ed world, it doesn't always have to be team sports, right? So like, I've been speaking to Laura and the phys ed department, and there's gonna be a lot of outside the box thinking, cause it shouldn't just be, that it's the fall, so we have to do whatever sport aligns in phys ed. It's meeting students where they're at and, seeing the interest of what students want to do and maybe kind of switching up what is being taught in PE, because it doesn't always have to be the traditional team sports, so we have some exciting things to plan for,
Can
yeah.
you talk about that for me?
Oh, yeah.
Cosmic bowling, at my school that I am currently finishing the year out, we did cosmic bowling, which was glow in the dark bowling for families, so the families got to come back and, we set up lanes with lights, and we had a lot of like black lights and glow in the dark paint and made signs, and the families came in and they were able to bowl together, which was really nice. So the community piece we'll be working on as well, to get the community involved in doing some fitness activities.
I love it.
I
Thank
think
you.
what does my heart good in hearing this and heard it before was the evolution from the idea that we say to the faculty, pursue something that brings you interest and curiosity and joy. And that was last year, right, with the thinking that then evolves into the kind of conversations we're happening now, that where faculty say, hey, you know what? I love that. Let me think about how that can be reflected in the experience of the students, right? That's always the end goal. And so we're seeing more and more evidence of that kind of thinking, and led by Bill and Christine and Laura. It's exciting to see.
So I love the interest in fencing. It was my sport. But it is a notoriously expensive sport, gear wise. And I'm wondering, do we have plans to make sure, and fit is super important. I'm wondering, do we have,
So I can answer
put
that a
any
little bit.
thought into how we
So-
can afford it?
So, Joe initially, and it's down the line a little bit, it isn't like tomorrow. But Joe has a connection with West Point, so they have all the electronic equipment that they would be willing to share, cause Joe and the coach up there are two peas in a pod with fencing. So I think initially when they come down, and Joe did it the last time, they backed trucks up to the door, we unloaded all the gear. He had the resources, and I think if we ever did start that, he'd be a person that would wanna coach it, so I think his connections in that world. But even if it's just to expose the kids in phys ed, and then they go to the club, they seek out a place to have it, and at least we've kind of wet their whistle and given them the appetite to do it. So that's,
And that's a winter sport?
it is a winter sport.
Just wanna make sure he's still on tennis.
Yeah. And the beauty of it is they don't need facility, like
Yeah.
Irvington does it in the hallway, they put the mats down and then it's Saturday contest at one school. So 6 to 8 schools will show up and they do every Saturday in January. It's a short season, but it sounds interesting.
Any other questions?
Nope, good.
So I don't mean to sound at all, and don't take this as a quote Debbie Downer at all. But I'm looking over at our assistant superintendent for business, who is going to always be talking about resources. What I think might be helpful for the board with respect to these kinds of initiatives, and I'm not saying for this budget, but just a more long-term plan and understanding that, interest may change, resource needs may change, but just some idea about resource needs as we go forward. Because Bill, you touched on something. You said the word staffing, right? We have dedicated coaches and, talking about Joe Paterno, coaches with different interest and flexibility in different kinds of athletic offerings or phys ed offerings. But we need to know, how we're going to be able to provide all those opportunities, fund them, and have also the space resources. So I'm thinking not for this budget, but just as we go along, and Christine, as you're working on it, to really think about that and give the board and administration, a sense of what will be needed and what we should be thinking about this year, next year, or not so much this budget, next year, year after, and so we can plan. And the other thing that I note is somebody mentioned sports history and current events. So that just strikes me as another kind of an interdisciplinary course, probably a very we get a lot of interest among kids about things, whether it's about NIL, recruitment, whether it's about, the business of sports that I think kids would love and, would be both a phys ed and history.
And right now, I think what we'll do, what the plan is to do these mini classes within the size of the regular class and see where the interest is, and then to poll the students ultimately and see, hey, have we missed something that you have a group of kids that are really interested in, and that's a driving force.
Just as a quick follow-up and to piggyback on what you said, as I'm sitting here thinking about this, it occurs to me that as we start thinking about things in different silos, right, to go back a year or two, some of these programs, not just related to athletics, but also related to technology or the arts or our music program, they meet like a mental health need for our students. And, we don't always have the opportunity to pull from those budgets for that. So I would just encourage everyone in having these conversations to be aware of that component for our students, because it's not just an athletic component, it's also where they see themselves or how they identify as students in our community, and not just related to athletics, related to, the opportunity to use the latest technology, related to the opportunity to practice their instrument and to work in the arts, or to have the opportunity to do other things. So I hope that we have a little bit of leeway in terms of our budget too, that we're meeting higher needs that maybe, don't fall into an accounting code, which I know you know.
Could I ask about the 90 additional athletes this fall compared to last fall? Why is that? Do you think is it a COVID rebound? Is it just is it a historical high?
Well, the numbers that I have don't go back far enough that I can really give you too much of a longitudinal study, but I don't know if it was the perfect storm of kids coming back from COVID and just the interest. We have, I think, a top-notch coaching staff. I think a lot of great coaches that connect with students. I think that we push the limits on roster space, where I think, talking to a couple of coaches that were here previous years, we didn't. We might have had 8 on a roster of 15 rather than 15 on a roster of 15. And I don't know, I don't really have a solid answer for you, other than, I think the staffing, and maybe it was COVID, I don't know.
There were definitely prior years where there were cuts made, and I haven't seen that or heard as much from parents regarding, cuts and playing time and all that.
But I think something that goes to that is obviously, and I know the board for many years, Bill, when you were back in the day, we talked about philosophy at each level, right? Dr. Steyer's report from that 2005, which I'm sure you remember, how you develop a unified longitudinally, meaning from middle school to junior varsity to varsity program, with the understanding of what each component does and how that feeds into the next one, and the relationship to club teams, what we provide to both provide opportunities for students, as well as provide the opportunities for athletic success when we're getting at the varsity level, and we are in essence, being or trying to be competitive with the schools. So I know that comes into.
And I know you and I talked about the head coach as a CEO. I'd like to think that head coach helped all the way down the line. I think it's too soon to see those wins of kids being out because of the head coach, but the head coach being at modified games and the connections between the teams were good, and I don't think that was there in the past few years. So I think that's going to even make it better going forward.
So a follow-up to that, Do we have the infrastructure to sustain this level of interest in athletics?
I think so. I think kids are coming through well, Denise asked me, like, we're giving out all this space, for different sports, that are ASO, Little League, CYO, and, we don't have enough space to give them all the time they want in the buildings in training. So I feel like, all those programs just mentioned are at an all-time high, and that will just keep building into our programs.
Okay.
Do you mean community interest or resources
Infrastructure in the school district.
in the school district?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think once the turf's down too, we're gonna see a big change.
Yeah.
That's gonna be a huge help.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do have one other question for these two individuals, which is, next week, I understand we have a lot of athletes or teams in various competitions at states or section one, perhaps at the same time. So how are you guys gonna split up being in?
No, we've mapped it out. Tuesday, the girls play home at 3:30. Strategically place the boys game at 6:15 at Alexander Hamilton, so we'll bounce from one to the other. Hockey section will start tomorrow, so I'll be down at that. I'm gonna go up Friday to the States, to Albany to watch our wrestlers. And then we'll follow the teams as they go. If either the boys or the girls win, and I hope they both do, they go to the county center. So, we had an 8th grader on the hill today up skiing in the sectionals. I'm waiting for the last results to come back, but he was in the middle of the pack, which is pretty impressive for an 8th grader. I think he was the only middle schooler on the hill, to be honest. I don't have that as fact, but I think I'm pretty correct with that. So it's been a good winter, and the spring, by all accounts, should be equally as good. The one big thing is the classifications change a little bit next year, so we push up kind of back to a lot of our old schools, to be honest, because like Briarcliff, Pleasantville, those schools are bigger than us right now, and we were the biggest of the small, and now we'll be one of the smaller of the big. So that'll be interesting to see where that goes next year.
Well, I for one just want to, real quick, I'm so excited to see that we will have a unified program starting next year. When I was at the NISBA convention in the fall, I went to a session about unified sports, and it just seems like an incredible program. So I'm so excited that we are able to provide resources and get that up off the ground.
Cool. And by the way,
see that that's sort of an outgrowth of one of our
a
teachers'
financial
passion
piece with
projects.
that, Special Olympics, gives us a $2,000 grant year one and a $1,000 grant year two. So they definitely help us with that funding.
And credit to Kevin Brunel.
Yeah, that's
His passion
fantastic.
project has followed this through. Next, as Rachel
you.
would say, it's time to innovate.
I have 3 minutes remaining.
Time, sorry.
Dr. Blair.
Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. So just to get started, when we think of the vision map, right, and the district's vision, it excites me to think about the way our department technology can contribute to that. And I think I zero in the most on reimagining schooling, because we know that technology is changing at just such a dynamic and rapid pace. And it's so important that we keep up with that so that we prepare our students. And I think of two kind of major functions of the department. That's to prepare students to be future ready, and also to equip our teachers with emerging technologies. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the future. I'll zero in on 3 kind of major aspects of my team, which would be data, professional learning, and infrastructure. So as much as we like to talk about those forward-facing pieces as they impact students and teachers, we have to talk about the background piece, which is the data piece, right? Data privacy and security is at the forefront of everything that I do, because we have to secure that, right? We have to put securities in place to ensure that all of that is protected. This year, we had the opportunity with some staffing changes to kind of reimagine the way the data team is equipped within this district. So we found, we put an RFP out, request for proposals, and EduTech, who we contract for IT services, is now providing data services to the district. That's actually a remote team. They're offsite, so they're not in-house. And I meet with them on a regular basis. We compete to put different backgrounds up. And actually, the other day, we all had the same one up. We cheered. I think it was like a little street scene in Mexico, which was pretty cool. So anyway, this data team has changed my life. Honestly, they are so efficient in what they do. They use our ticketing system that the IT team uses. So if teachers have issues, or even our student help desk has a data concern, that routes through the Mojo ticketing system and goes directly to that team, and they get to work on it right away. So that's incredibly efficient, but that also provides me with metrics, which I love. So I can start to see where are the biggest issues, right? So we can start to figure out, like, how can we fix those and make the team's time more efficient. So that's been incredible. That team, I just like to highlight, they have three kind of primary responsibilities. Primary one is working with the student information system, which is Infinite Campus, right? So that's really where all of our student data is housed. So it's so important that that data, as it comes into the system or as changes happen, that it's super clean, right? Because that impacts reporting, state reporting. They also then take that data and they configure rostering. So any of our platforms that we use that utilize student data that have been approved through privacy regulations, that then gets kind of shipped out to those companies, and that's through a single sign-on service that we call ClassLink. You may be familiar with that. So all of those are linked together. And then this team is incredible at automating systems. So an example of that is we have now the OneSync server. So some local schools who have recently been audited by the state comptroller, some of the things that come up frequently are when we have inactive accounts. Those can pose security risks, because if it's an inactive employee but the account stays active, technically you could get into that, right, if you were a hacker. So our OneSync server automates the deactivation and activation of accounts. So if we in our HR system deactivate an employee with an end date, that immediately shuts down their Google account, their Microsoft Active Directory account. It's all automated, right? So those are all security systems that have been put into place. And this team has been really smart in terms of finding ways within our system to make that more efficient. So I speak to this data privacy and security. Again, I take it very seriously. We have obviously federal regulations, but we're lucky to be in a state that has pretty strict state regulations, and that's that at Law 2D. So any of our vendors who we're releasing that student data to must agree to our locally designed Parent Bill of Rights and data privacy contracts. And then I put up the NIST framework. The state also recommends that we follow a very rigorous framework for cybersecurity. The NIST framework was actually developed for corporations, so it can be sometimes very difficult to implement in an educational setting, but we're doing it. My team, I sit with the IT team and my data team, and every week on our agenda, we pick through at least one aspect of that framework, and we update it, we revise it. I sent in a recent memo that I'm updating all of you to a higher level of security. So you're going to get a password change. So yeah, we're going to go from there. So, so we also every 3 years have to comply with external audits, right? So that are not done by the IT team or in-house, right? So we'll contract that service out, and they'll do what's called an external penetration test, where they try to get into our network. Mm-hmm. And we then get a full audit from them, and we go through that very seriously, and we implement any systems of
So
security.
where does that requirement come from?
So that it's actually not a requirement, it's a recommendation, right? So
Okay.
most of the NIST cybersecurity, they're recommendations because they can be very difficult for all school districts to put into, they're very expensive. So you'll see, right, some shifts in my budget in terms of increases, and that is because these implementations are getting more and more and more expensive. I put the Fortinet suite up there. We use the Fortinet suite of tools for any surface that data can be attacked. And it's getting quite expensive. So, but it's not something we really can compromise. So we will contract the audit through our BOCES, which is great because we can get aid through that. So we're always trying to find ways in which we can get aid through those services. And BOCES has been incredible at constantly and continually working on those pieces for us. So that's a data piece. And again, that's not necessarily reimagining schooling, but we can't reimagine school if we're not safe, if that makes sense. Okay. So the next piece here is the professional learning piece. And I spoke a little bit earlier about emerging technologies, right? So it's so important that our educators are equipped with the resources to engage students in emerging technologies. Again, not cheap, right? And I've done a lot of work in the last 3 years to find little areas and pockets of our system that haven't really had access to emerging technologies. So music is one of those, right? There are now 3 music platforms that we're utilizing, and like Sight Reading Factory is one of them, and it allows students access to sight reading. And that's a very important part of music education and practice. Another area is the high school English department, for example. They tried out a vocabulary software that was actually very eye-opening to them and changed the way in which they viewed vocabulary instruction. And that's powerful, right? So while the tools aren't cheap, they do shift the way our teachers think about pedagogical implementation, if that makes sense. So budgeting for those softwares, budgeting for the support, the ongoing support for teachers to utilize them. I have Apple Professional Learning up there, APL. As you know, I'll talk about it in the next slide, but the iPads, right? As we engage more with the Apple ecosystem, we want to really engage teachers with how the tool can actually be used more than just a device, right? So that's exciting. Translation technology is a big part of our vision. We have some individuals who, through their action research and passion work, Charlie, who's our nurse at PVC, and Zoha, who's a school counselor here, have partnered together, and they have been researching all of these different translation technologies, and upon their recommendations, we'll be procuring them and implementing them. And then I say pedagogical innovation. We're playing around a lot with some screencasting technology. If you remember, in September, promoting the Apple TV, we've actually found that we don't really like the Apple TV so much. Sorry, Apple. And there's actually a different system, which I'll speak to. You'll see it on the next slide, Vivi, which allows it's device agnostic, so that it doesn't matter what device somebody has, they can share to the screen. So that's kind of where we're going, and that then allows teachers, we have teachers who hold the iPad in their hands and annotate slides, and they're sitting right next to a group of students, and it's going on the display, right? They don't have to be locked in front of that display. So we are continually working to promote the ways we reimagine schooling with our teachers and emerging technologies. For the next piece, our infrastructure, this is the fun stuff, right? These are the toys and the devices. So one-to-one device refresh, we're now entering our 5th year of one-to-one device implementation. And when we talk about equity and access to resources, this is huge, right? That we provide every student with a device in this district. So there is no limit to that access. We also provide households that need internet with internet. We have those devices as well. As we reimagine our one-to-one device with the iPads, next year iPads will flow. They're now in kindergarten and first grade. They will flow up to the second grade. We'll be getting keyboards for those cases because that's where students really start to implement keyboarding. And then we'll also, our fifth graders who had them this year will travel with those, and we'll get our new fifth graders next year with those. So 2 of our 4 grades at PVC will have the iPads. The iPad implementation has been incredible. Our teachers have been excited about having them in the classroom. I think the students treat the device a little differently. Our breakage rate is down significantly. I think we've sent 4 iPads so far this year out for repair. And the way Apple does it is we just get a swap. So while the device is being repaired, a new one has been overnighted to us, and we get that device right back in the child's hands. So that's been incredible. I just visited fifth grade, and they were using the iPads to record audio and video for a podcasting experience. And then they were uploading with Greg's support. I have to highlight Greg here. They actually had Greg come in, and he was like the guru of the day, right? And took them through all of kind of his thinking from a communications perspective. And then the students were uploading that video into iMovie and GarageBand to manipulate audio and to really personalize it. So when we think about the way we reimagine schooling for kids, and Anna, you had mentioned this, like they use these devices to personalize their learning, right? And they construct things and create things with these devices. And I think it's a lot more than what a Chromebook can do for them. Sorry, Chromebooks, but it's been phenomenal. Our flat screen technology, I've talked about this for a couple of years now. We've been utilizing the Promethean board. I'm proud to say that every working classroom at CET has now at least a flat screen and no more smart boards. We do have one room, I won't forget, that doesn't have any screen at all and hasn't had a screen, and that's a pull-out AIS room, and we'll get one this summer, so that's great. So we'll have all of that done. So the focus next year will be on PVC and the high school. So that's exciting. And you'll also notice a pretty big increase in the budget area where we have our infrastructure upgrades. Neil, to your point about forecasting, that's what we do in technology, because every year you can guarantee that I'm refreshing, especially like servers and switches behind the scenes. This year, upcoming year, we not only have a plan to refresh switches at CET they're not end of life, but the service piece is kind of being phased out. So we'll refresh those. We also have to start refreshing our access points in each building. And those access points come at a pretty high price. We're talking about $100,000 per building. So I normally don't have to do both a switch infrastructure project and an access point, but over the next 3 years, that's the plan, is to do access points, especially with our infrastructure project and our capital project. We want to partner with that from this department and make sure that our spaces are equipped with the latest technology. So I say Wi-Fi 7, those are the newest access points that enable Wi-Fi 7. It's just the newest Wi-Fi technology. So we'll be working with that, and we'll be using the last of our E-rate federally funded package, which I believe is every 5 years, and then we'll be on a refresh for that. I talked about Vivi. That will change the way screens are utilized throughout the district. They can be used for announcement purposes. So we could technically put them in each of these. And Laura could choose to blast out announcements to this. She could choose what she wants on every screen. And then within the classroom, with our single sign-on rostering service that I spoke about earlier, which is ClassLink, we can actually, Vivi has an app, and teachers can pull up their roster and choose if they want a child to cast their device screen up on the board. And then the child can annotate and do a problem. So it's great. You know, it's not, you lose a lot of instructional time when you ask a child to get up to the board. You know, they want to play and skip, which is fun, but So that's the Vivi. So we'll be investing in that technology. We're in a pilot phase right now, and it's been very well received. We have one in district office that we've been kind of playing around with, which is a lot of fun. I throw in the IT support contract. We have one level 2 tech on site. That's Miguel. And then we have 1.6 level 1 techs on site, which we have Joe and Alton. And those are our guys that are answering the IT related tickets on a daily basis. I get a weekly report from them. They're closing out tickets really fast. We just did a huge printer refresh, which has been great. So I wouldn't be able to do it without those guys.
Are you suggesting that there's gonna be a change in staffing?
No, I like to put that on there because that contract it's a big contract, right? And it's something that, just to be transparent, how incredibly important they are to our system, right? We wouldn't be able to do even the forecasting piece, right? They're really helpful for me. We have a whole spreadsheet that shows all of our equipment and kind of what life cycle it's on and kind of where we'll be at. So we try to time it. We did a massive server refresh last year. That's about every 7 years. We try not to couple that with then the access points because the switches are much cheaper than the servers. So we're doing it, but we always are looking at what's next. And then I throw esports on here. So this is a dream. If we can fit it in this year, that would be incredible. This is really Laura and the high school's passion. I'm not sure if you're familiar with esports, but it is competitive gaming. There are leagues in the region. There's schools that have esport games where it's actually they're sitting in front of a station and they're gaming. And students, I think it pulls from a population of students that maybe are not athletically inclined, but they want to be in competitive gaming. We have athletes who are esports athletes. So it's an exciting possibility here. There's a growing kind of background for scholarships for these students, college, collegiate esports. But to get that program into a school district is very expensive because there's a lot of equipment that needs to be purchased. You can't just use a normal device. It's a gaming computer. They have chairs that are really fancy and comfortable. And it's also space, right? We have to kind of figure out where space is. But Laura and the high school's vision, we're looking at even potentially intertwining the esports idea into curriculum and into course offerings. So I think that it's an imperative to really very seriously invest in this and honor this, because I think it could be really great for our community and something unique that we offer to our students. So if we can do it in next year's budget, we will. It might not happen with next year. Denise and I we're talking about it. We're doing our tango, technology budget tango, right? But we'll figure it out. And if it's not this year, it's in my long-term plan for
Any
sure.
state or federal grants for this?
I think that's definitely an option. Rachel and I have talked about that in terms of, so we'll get creative, right? And
Advocacy committee?
yeah, and honestly, when we talk about like going through BOCES, right? BOCES does offer a lot of opportunities to get eatable product. So we'll make it happen however we can, but I think it could be really exciting for us. So that is my budget. Josh.
You got a lot on your plate.
Yeah.
Couple of things. There's a lot of new tech here. Yeah. That's a lot of new tech all at the same time. Yeah. And do you have some thoughts on how you're gonna stage things? It's a lot to do in 1 year. And not that I'm saying that it's not doable, I'm a little bit concerned about a lot of moving parts.
Sure. Well, I'm happy to juggle all of them because it's something I am passionate about. I think when it comes to, I think the area that I'm most concerned with are the forward-facing pieces, right? Which are our teachers and our students, right? So we can put an iPad in students' hands, but there's some instruction related in terms.
That's
of,
actually the
right?
part I'm more concerned about.
Yeah, of
right?
course. So I think, this was a big trial year in terms of opening this up to our fifth graders. It was very interesting to me because when we rolled it out, when I first mentioned the idea to our first grade teachers, they were a little like, I don't know, we're really comfortable with our process. And the benefit was that our kindergarten students had already been using iPads. So the more we talked about it, the more they were like, no, I think we want to do this. So that was the piece. It's really making sure that teachers are ready and there's buy-in there, right? And the conversation is there, and then guaranteeing that they'll have whatever support that they need. So I preemptively had conversations with the first grade teachers last year. I got iPads in their hands. We started doing iPad 101, right? We started going through basic stuff and really ensuring that they understood that they didn't have to create this revolutionary lesson with an iPad right away, that would come naturally, right? And the first graders now it was just seamless, right? Because they had that experience. Fifth grade was a little different, right? Because they went from using Chromebooks all the way through, for the most part, to now having this new device. Again, it was speaking with those fifth grade teachers, ensuring that they had the comfort with the tool, and then making sure that they communicated that to kids. So I think I'm planning ahead, right? So this year, in this current school year, I had purchased enough iPads in the beginning of the year. All of our sixth grade teachers have them in their hands, and all of our second grade teachers have them in their hands. So that when the kids come to them, they feel comfortable with the tool. That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So it's a slow burn. And I totally hear you on it, but it's gone well so far. And I think it's something that teachers are excited to learn about. So when we talk about professional learning opportunities, they want to be there and they're excited to be there. And it's something new and innovative. So I hear you.
For this, on the backside, there's also a lot, we're talking about a lot in the fiscal plan changing,
Yes.
right? That's a lot to do in 1 year also.
Miguel is a little upset with me about that. So Miguel, right, who is our level 2 tech, Miguel is used to the Windows environment, right? EduTech comes with a strong Windows experience, but I have to say that EduTech has been incredibly, as an entity, EduTech has been incredibly supportive in getting their teams trained in. So there's in the background, right? We use JAMP, which is the MDS, the management side of things, right? So that we could push out to all iPads a certain app or certain restrictions, right? For student safety and the filters and things like that. So that's been tricky. But it's happening, right? We're rolling with it.
My question was more on the lines of, is the current staff count, which is what, 2.6, is that right?
Yep.
Sufficient to the task?
So far, so good. Honestly, I'm really pleased with it. We made
I
the
just want to say,
choice.
yeah, correct.
Well, yeah, 2.6 total. And we can't, not include our aide at PVC, Phyllis, right? So she's
Okay.
technically a teacher aide for that building, but her primary function in that building is to support the tech piece of it. So students go to her, she's not at the welcome desk, but she's at the welcome desk, the one after the doors.
Right.
She's always there, and the students go to her. She's very helpful in collecting the iPads at the end of the year and the Chromebooks and getting them ready to go for the next implementation. So far, yes, I'm not
Okay.
asking for that 0.4 quite yet, but.
I love how he's looking over.
I know, I'm like, shall we tank? Yeah, I mean, it's been going well. And I had mentioned with the data team, the metrics associated with our ticketing system. I get metrics on the IT side of things, and they're clearing tickets. I'm not getting complaints from teachers. We talked about the automation piece earlier. Now the student help desk, which is a Google form, and that's linked on our website, and we have it promoted more so in the higher grade levels because students are more self-sufficient when it comes to the tech requests, but teachers assisted at the other levels. That's a fully automated system. So if a student enters in a Google form, their help desk request, it auto generates a ticket in Mojo, and the tech team knows where to find them and what to do and how to help them. So I think when you automate, right, you tend to help that staffing.
Oh, absolutely.
So you gotta get
It's always, that's what my team at work does. It's all about how do you, if you can automate it.
Yeah.
The human toil goes down significantly.
That's right, and it's that human, right, I value, and every week that I meet with both data and IT, we talk a lot about the human interaction, right, and making sure that, you know, we're in very customer service oriented field here. People that reach out to us tend to be flustered or frustrated or have a problem. So we have to be very patient and very forthcoming, and that relationship is key. So you're right, if we can
So
automate
just
the back.
turn it off and turn it on again.
Well, that's what I say. Some politics, right? Rachel, did you restart your phone? And she's like, don't tell me that again. You gotta try.
That applies to what we're providing to students and to faculty and staff as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the value proposition.
Yeah.
Is reducing toil.
Yep.
Or one of the value propositions. We're opening up new possibilities, but one of the other things that we're doing in the process is reducing the toil involved in the things that are the everyday tasks.
Yeah.
Things that take a lot of time, things like rostering you were talking
Yeah.
about, for example, was something, and we can do it on.
Like I know.
Delaney, we're a far piece from the Delaney book.
Yes, when I received the book, the binder from Deba, right, in 2021,
Right.
it was like you have to upload spreadsheets of student data to all of these platforms.
Mhm.
None of that's done anymore because it's all automated directly from Infinite
You end up
Campus.
paying upfront to do the automation, but
Yeah.
once it's automated, it's automated,
That's it.
and you don't need to do it again.
You got it.
No disrespect to Deb, this was like a fast evolving process, right? So like, it didn't exist back then for her to have
Right,
another.
well, no,
opportunity,
and I
right?
wouldn't be where I'm at if it
Right.
wasn't for all of the hard
Yeah.
work that, you know,
Totally.
Deba was great at forecasting, and she handed me a very well packaged department. So I was able to just pick up and go, which was great. Yeah.
Thanks.
You mentioned,
Yes.
$100,000 per building, that was the wireless access.
Those are access points, yeah, so we'll do the plan is to do one building at a time.
And is there one in the budget for this year?
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Which
we're
building?
planning to do the high school, which has the most spaces, right? Because we have a lot of public spaces that we encourage students to utilize, so it's not just making sure that all of the classrooms are equipped, it's making sure that every single space in this building is equipped.
That's essentially the mesh of like
got
wireless
it.
access. Okay,
Yeah,
and then,
and outdoors too. We have outdoor access
Right.
after COVID.
and then once, so the high school will be done, and then how long will that last?
So that should last about 7 years. Yeah. 5 to 7 is kind of the sweet spot with most of this technology, so. Yeah,
So just
So
on,
there's one in the budget for the
so we're
company.
doing one of the buildings, yeah, and we'll do them 3 consecutive years so that they're nice and close together, right? Yeah, the cycle through.
oh, okay, I know, that's fine.
So with respect to the EduTech contract, you kept mentioning the expense of it, but isn't it? I mean, it's my understanding, like in law firms, most of that stuff is outsourced because it's actually more cost efficient to have a contract than to have people on staff. Is that?
That's a, yes, that's a perspective. I would agree with that. Just in my role, and I'm very transparent. I was an educator, right? I
Right.
am an educator. I taught chemistry. I taught in Harrison
Oh.
15 years.
There it is.
Yeah, they pick on me because I say that a lot. People didn't know that I was a teacher for a long time, right? So, you know, my degree and my lifelong career was not specialized in IT infrastructure, right? I'm okay to say that. So the educational model, right? I know instruction really well, and I know what teachers need, and I know what students need. My IT team supplements that in terms of their expertise. So when we merge those, we're like a powerhouse, right? That's the way I like to look at it.
Yeah,
So that EduTech contract to me is gold, honestly, and it's a strong force, and we have a really solid team on site right now. I feel like we've cultivated a great working relationship. They know our teachers really well. I mean, Miguel was here a year prior to me and is extremely passionate about this community and loves coming here every day, right? That's says a lot, so.
and then I jumped ahead to your next slide. You have, $50,000 decrease in supplies and other.
Yeah, so what happens with those lines is that, like, for example, that line had most of my CET, that line is for items over $500, so that's really where those Promethean flat screens live. So I'm just not putting as much money into the flat screen replacement as I did this year, if that makes any sense, right? I'm doing fewer screen, like, it's still a lot of screens. We're planning to do 15 total screens at $4,000 a piece. That's a lot. This year we were able to do more, but that was because we weren't doing wireless access points and infrastructure upgrades like switches. This year we did switches. We did half of them as CET, but no wireless access points because it just wasn't in the cards for us. So I filled in, right? I
Yeah.
did more screens.
I'm not done, I'm sorry.
No.
And then, my last question is, you mentioned offering wireless access to families.
Yeah.
Who need it. So I don't know, just for the benefit of the public and anyone listening, if you could just describe the process by which that happens.
Yeah, typically, if a family, there's a number of ways in which that can get communicated to me, right? Typically, it goes through our PPS staff, like our school, especially our school counseling team. It could go through our psychologists. It could just go through the main office. As soon as I know that that's needed, we have hotspots that we can loan out to families. So they're here. And I was able to get 20 of them. We have a larger chunk, but 20 of the contracts through T-Mobile were through a special program in which they're free to us. So.
Actually, I have a quick,
Yeah.
I had a quick question actually piggybacking on that, because I was just thinking, because I did the Infinite Campus digital equity survey.
Thank
that came
you.
through. So it was like, so is that data, like, because that's from New York State, right?
That's correct.
But is that data that we can also utilize to see if there are families that
100%,
don't
yeah.
have?
So, so parents were asked through Parent Square, right, to go into Infinite Campus, log in, and you fill out one survey for each child, right? So that attaches to that student number, and then it gets uploaded to the state. So the state has metrics on kind of what the internet access is, what the access to devices is, right? Which is nice because we can safely say that even if a family is having trouble affording internet, we can provide that for them, right? Which is lovely. So that's another metric in which we can reach out to families with that. Yeah.
Other questions for Jerry?
Yeah, one is, I guess,
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
one is, I guess, a rather perhaps prosaic question concerning the pie graph.
Yep.
We talked about, for example, you said redoing the wireless access points, right? At
Mhm.
the school, but that's $100,000 not shown in the high school, but shown in the district. So maybe for purposes of.
Yeah,
budget,
absolutely. Great question. The
Okay.
infrastructure upgrades, I do not parse out by building within the contract or within the budget. They're part of what we call the OCS, other contractual services, because they are contracted out, right? E-rate requires us to do a pretty aggressive bidding procedure, right? We have to do the bidding for anything over, what's the number? It's 1,000, the bidding process for just items over, is it 1,000?
I'm sorry, I was not listening.
No, that's okay.
Or
Equipment.
consulting services. Yeah, so we try to RFP anything
Right.
over
So
five to $10,000, so it's not a requirement.
So my infrastructure upgrades always are more than that, right? So the idea is they fall under the OCS line, which is technically a district line. If that makes sense.
As would be the, by and large, the BOSI services one.
Yeah.
So, and perhaps some of the equipment, I'm just saying, when we look at this and we see just on those
Yeah.
line
And there
items,
are-
where the big,
Yeah, and
Increases
a
on-
lot of the, like, if I develop any contingency for failing technology or replacement parts, right, that happen throughout the year. So for example, the EduTech team is responsible for repairing Chromebooks in-house. We have to purchase those replacement parts, right? Any replacement parts I put in the district-wide budget. I don't parse out necessarily where, because they could be anywhere. Software, right? If it's used by the entire district, that also goes in district-wide. So you'll see, CET actually utilizes the most individual software. But you'll see that it's quite comparable to the others because they're not getting the flat screens this year, if that makes sense, right? So, we try to keep everything pretty evenly, parsed out between the three.
I have a question about the supplies line versus the equipment line.
Yeah.
This might actually be more for Denise. Why do flat screens go in supplies and not in equipment?
Because equipment codes we can't transfer in and out of, and they're under $5,000. So we generally look at items 5,000 and above for equipment.
Okay. $5,000 per unit,
Yeah.
not $5,000 in
Not in-
aggregate. Okay.
That's the capitalization threshold, right?
Yeah.
I just have one final question. Is there any discussion regarding switching the high school over to math books?
Yes, it's certainly in my kind of 5-year plan to reevaluate, reassess the BYOD program, right? We have to continually assess whether it's the right fit. I think right now, it's doing well, right, in terms of the way we have it, which is you can bring your own device if you're 9 through 12, or you can get a district supplied device. Right now, the district supplied device is a Chromebook. Eventually, like in my thinking, with our current 5th graders, once they've completed their entire experience at PDC having an iPad in their hands, I might be more inclined to then say all 9th graders of that cohort will get whatever device it is, whether it's another iPad or it's a MacBook. It's very possible, right? You'll definitely see that increase in our budget at that point. But it's something we certainly could plan for and forecast for. Apple has some pretty great solutions when it comes to like financing and things like that, so we can get creative.
I'm sorry, what's the breakdown between, at the high school, the BYOD and district supplied devices?
So the majority of the 9th grade class takes the Chromebook. That then starts to trickle off over time just naturally, right? So we find, I would say out of 110 students in the 9th grade, 80 of them take a Chromebook, and then the others bring their own device. And then over time, they start to, our senior class has the fewest in terms of the use of those devices.
Wanted to say I really appreciate the proactive approach on security.
Yes,
Thank you for that.
of course.
Usually when you're buying this stuff, the way I've experienced is year 1, you have to consider with acquisition cost.
Yeah.
And year 2, 3, 4, 5, it's the maintenance cost.
Yeah.
Where are we on that cycle? Right?
So in terms of our infrastructure.
Yeah, the more on the cybersecurity, on the data side.
On the data side of things, I would say the cost always goes up because the amount of safeguards that are required go up because hackers get more and more and more sophisticated, if that makes sense, right? So I don't really see maintenance necessarily. I see we're always implementing more and more safeguards. a lot of that comes just with simple training. And training really from me and
The end
is
user is the
free,
biggest thing.
right? So that's our first line of defense always. And we use the fishing expeditions, right, which then, you know, we try to kind of catch people in whether or not they've paid attention and whether or not the training has paid off. So after that, we then have all of our safeguards in place, but I would say those costs just keep going up.
Yeah.
There's some, you know, it's unfortunately, but we have to do it. There's no compromise on our cybersecurity piece.
And that's all baked in.
It's all baked in. Yeah, like I said, we use the FortiNet suite for the most part. We are always reevaluating if that is the most cost-effective solution, but I'm super hesitant to switch because it's been working. And we have found instances of where it has caught certain events, right? And that's exactly what you want. So I think also five-year plan is, Denise and I talk about this a lot, shifting as much as possible to cloud-based services because it's been kind of proven time and time again that that is the most secure. I just sent an email out to our staff today explaining that we will be transitioning away from local network storage drives. So we commonly refer to it as like the H drive and teachers save stuff, right? So I basically said, you have until the end of this year to get all of your stuff into your Google Drive.
We're all called base drive, I guess.
So, you know, and that.
Windows 1998.
Yeah, it's when I was in Harrison, no. I transitioned for 15 years, 2014, I transitioned all of my network drive to, you know, it's a process and with any change like that, right, comes a little trepidation and a little fear. So I think that at this point in my tenure here at Croton in my 3 years, I've built trust, right? And I think that when I say to people, it's gonna be okay, we're gonna hold your hand through the process, we're gonna give you a lot of time, they believe me, right? So I sent that out, Steve and I conversed over email, I sent that out today in the afternoon. I really have not heard much from people. I expected maybe a little bit more. But I think it's gonna be okay, so.
Since you're headed in that direction, have you considered just going to a zero trust approach and entirely and say there's no such thing as a trusted device?
Well, not yet, no. Yeah.
Because that's the future.
Yeah.
The future is to not treat any device as a trusted device.
That's right.
Everything is treated as suspect and basically rely on your encryption and authentication for everything that you do. It's and the first step to doing that is moving away from things like local drives.
Yeah. The chief privacy officer of New York State Ed has sent a memo to all districts within New York State saying that they would be conducting a data security review virtual call. So that will be forthcoming in I would say the next couple of weeks or months. And that's always a good thing, right? It's not an audit per se, but we'll get some metrics and we work with those and we push them, right? So.
I have one more quick question.
Sure.
You talked about the esports and maybe this budget or next budget. Are they in these current numbers or not?
Yes, we kept them in for now. And I believe they're under the BOCES line. Yeah, because we would be getting aid on those. But again, we're not quite sure yet, right? We have to kind of play around with it. It's a big hit. And I want to make sure that we know exactly where it's going to go, that we have the actual physical space for it, because it would not be mobile devices, it would be actual desktops, which we're kind of getting away from the desktop world, right? So we have to be certain that we're okay with physical devices that are And they'll heat up a room, they'll, right, there's definitely some implications with that.
That we will not
So-
trust. We will not.
Definitely not trust.
We will not trust.
That's a no-go.
Just if I could, on that theme of, and for the public's benefit, of esports, of mountain biking, of fencing. We want to make sure, and that the public will notice this throughout the entire budget series of presentations, it isn't just an opportunity to talk about what's in this budget, it's an opportunity to talk about ideas. And that's responsive to a couple of things. One is we've heard from the board in the past couple of budget cycles were questions that sounded something like, can you tell us about things you'd love to be doing, but that didn't quite make it into this budget? And so we want to be responsive to that first and foremost. And second, to go back to our original point, it isn't just about this one budget, this moment in time, it's about a trajectory of ideas. And so while some of these things may not make it into the 24-25 budget, and you'll hear ideas from the principals that are the same, it's about where we're headed as an organization. And so when we hear again about esports in 6 months or 12 months, hopefully the community doesn't say, wow, where did that come from? And same thing with the ideas that you'll hear from the principals as well.
Alright. Anyone have any more questions? Well, thank you, Dr. Blair, and thank you again,
Thanks.
Bill and Christine, for coming to present with us this evening.
Thanks for having
And as we look, kicking off our budget discussions, the next couple of
It's budget
meetings.
season.
Thank you. It is budget season.
Yes. Love it.
All right, well, thank you guys very much. And so following this, we will be moving into executive session, so I wish you all a lovely evening.
You're not gonna wait for us to come out? No?
You'd like us to?
No.
Recommended action that the Board of Education enters into executive session to discuss collective negotiations of the Croton Teachers Association pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law, the employment history of a particular person or persons, and the record of a student that must remain confidential pursuant to COPA.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor? Aye. Oppose, abstain, motion carries.
Yeah,
All right.
I think you did something that we anticipate.
Yes, we anticipate adjourning immediately following our executive session, so. To anyone who's joining us on live stream, thank you very much. And